Napoli fans around the world, welcome to Napoli Talk. It's been a while, but we are finally back talking about Napoli, and this is the official start of Napoli Talk Season 3. Luckily, in this past month, there wasn't that much to talk about with regards to Napoli between the Euros and the lack of players that Napoli sold and bought, so actually you guys didn't miss much. However, there are 5 talking points that we can talk about over the last 20 or so days that Napoli have been in the retreat. So, number 1 is Victor Osimhen, starting his second season at Napoli. He's had an unfortunate first season, both with COVID and a shoulder injury, which really did not allow him to be 100% for large parts of last season, scoring only 10 goals. It is my expectation this year that Osimhen will score at least 20, and that's just from what I can tell from how he ended last season and how he's about to start this season. 3 goals in the last 2 games, 2 against Bayern Munich, and they were really good goals, but also the one that he scored against Provercelli. It was just a header from a set piece situation, but his movement to free up the space for himself for that header was really good. So he's looking extremely sharp, and that's what we want to see from Victor Osimhen. And with 20 plus goals in a season, who knows where Napoli could end up at the end of the year. And we can see that he's really in form by the way he scored the second goal against Bayern Munich. Look from where he starts off, almost at the midfield. In fact, it was in midfield, and the movement that he makes is someone that understands exactly where he needs to be, what kind of run he needs to do, what kind of tempo he needs to do it at. Now, Victor Osimhen will play a crucial part in Napoli's season, and that goes without saying. But I think even more so this season compared to last because of the way that Napoli builds play from the back. So last season, it was very much goalkeeper to defender, sideways passing in midfield, and then eventually something goes to Osimhen, and every once in a while there'd be a long ball towards Osimhen. Whereas this time, it seems as though the long passes can come even from the back. So one thing that I noticed is that Contini, the goalkeeper that we have instead of Meret or Spina because they were still on holiday, he did a lot of long balls towards the attackers without having to necessarily play from the back. Same thing with Mauro Rui and, for example, Malquit when playing on the right. The first thing they did when they collected the ball was look to see where Osimhen was rather than playing it back. But it could be a time when the ball comes to him and it's not in the space and he has to protect it around the midfield. If he can become a bit more like Petagna, add that extra element to his game of protecting the ball with his back towards goal, then that can really help Napoli and he can be a complete striker. And talking about Petagna, guys, he hasn't played a single minute in the preseason. What's going on with that? I personally don't know. Mertens is obviously out until October. That's kind of worrying for me. The fact that we don't have a second to Osimhen that's fit and ready for the start of the season unless Petagna suddenly turns up. But, that is a huge issue. And that's something that we need to take into account also come January when the African Cup of Nations comes around. And, for us, that's a really big problem, that African Cup of Nations, because we've got Osimhen and Koulibaly that are going to go there. Potentially also Unas if he decides to stay or if Napoli decide to keep him. And then we've got a few transfer targets that are also going to be participating in that African Cup of Nations. And, if we build a team around these guys, then we are kind of screwed in January, so Napoli need to look into that. All right, now talking point number 2, following on from that, is Adamunas. So he's been a revelation in the summer period. He's been playing phenomenally well. He's shown real touches of class, and what's been extremely interesting is the fact that he's no longer playing in that left wing position that we've always seen him play when he was at Napoli, but Spalletti has moved him to a number 10, and in that position he's been great, not just going forward, his trickery, his assists, his vision. Those are things that we knew about Unas. What's been really impressive and surprising about him is his physicality and his ball recovery. And we see that with Napoli's first goal. He's right on the Bayern Munich player, recovers the ball, and then sends it to Victor Osimhen to score the goal. And, if he is able to provide that level of performance, then I don't see why Napoli shouldn't keep him. And Adamunas' contract is running out next year. So Napoli need to decide right now, are they going to sell him or are they going to renew? Okay, now talking point number 3, how can we not talk about this? It's Lobotka, but also just the midfield in general, but especially Lobotka. I mean, this guy is a new man. He is at least 7, maybe 70 kilos lighter than last season. I mean, last season he didn't even look like an athlete. I'm just going to be straight up honest about that. This season, or at least in this summer period, he actually looks like he belongs on a football field, and not just physically, but also the way he's playing. He's playing extremely smart. He's always in the right position. Obviously, Elmas and Zielinski playing alongside him really help him out with that. They're also in the right position, giving him many options to pass the ball to, and we can see that in these 2 screenshots. You've got Lobotka at the bottom end of that vertex of that triangle. He's got Zielinski and Elmas always as 2 reference points. So when he does receive the ball, he's got options and he can play the ball vertically. It makes him look good instead of Elmas or Zielinski being right alongside him and then playing lateral passes. And no one likes to see your midfield do lateral passes. So Spalletti figured this out really well. He says, if I put Elmas and Zielinski in front of Lobotka, he's forced to play the ball forward. Once he's forced to play the ball forward to Elmas or Zielinski, these are 2 guys that like to look forward. Elmas is the type of guy that likes to take the ball and run at you. Zielinski instead is a really good player to have in that advanced position because he's right-footed, left-footed, so he opens up the whole field in front of you. And, these guys are making Lobotka look really good, but, credit to Lobotka. But defensively as well, Lobotka and the midfield have been doing really, really well. They've been in the right positions. When Bayern Munich had the ball and they were in the midfield, we were in a 4-5-1, and it was a very, very organized 4-5-1. When Bayern Munich entered our last third, then we shifted to a 4-1-4-1, and that transition was quite seamless. It was smooth, and that's credit to Lobotka, Zielinski, and Elmas making the right sort of movements. And this sort of leads me into the other talking point, our defense and how we defend. Guys, we have conceded 0 goals. Now, a lot of people will say Bayern Munich were not at their full capacity. Sure, but they still did have players like Lewandowski playing up front. So credit where credit is due. And I think a lot of this credit goes to Spalletti. I talked about before how when Bayern Munich were in the midfield area, we were playing a 4-5-1. Now, in this position, Napoli are super aggressive. We take, for example, Elmas in this case, and he's kind of forward. He's moved out of that line trying to intercept a pass. That didn't work out for him. So then the ball goes behind him. But then actually we see that from the defense, we've got Koulibaly charging out and trying to get the ball. So we are playing very aggressive football, trying to recover the ball as much as possible. And, a lot of the times that seemed to work and we recovered the ball and then countered attack. But on the other hand, when we do lose the ball and we are far up our own field and there's a transition period, Napoli's line is very, very high. And even if it's a very, very high line, you can see that Manolas steps out of that line trying to intercept a possible pass because, again, we are taking that risk. We want to intercept the ball. We want to go for it. Does that leave a big space behind us? Yes. And in fact, Bayern Munich have the quality to make a great pass through Malcuit and Koulibaly. But this is where I think Malcuit and Koulibaly and Manolas, if things are happening on the other side, become really important because when you play such a high line, you need to be fast to recover the ball. They are fast players, especially Malcuit. And in fact, he did get the ball. He did intercept it and the problem was eliminated. And this leads me to, all right, so what do we do with Malcuit? Well, I think if Napoli are going to play with a high line when we have the ball and then when we lose it, then I think having a player like Malquit as backup to Di Lorenzo is actually a really good idea, because yes, he might not be the most talented, but in situations like these, he could save us from conceding a goal. And the final talking point I want to talk about is Zedatka and Zanoli, the two youngsters that featured in these two games. Now, starting off with Zedatka, I made a whole video about him a few months ago, and as you remember, I was saying how he is a very versatile player and his preferred position is left wing back. However, sometimes he was playing in midfield. Well, under Spalletti, he's actually been playing left wing instead of Lorenzo Insigne. At least that's how he's been starting most games. And guys, he's been extremely good. Dynamic player, really good at intercepting the ball, really good at being in the right space at the right time, making the right runs, and he almost scored a goal against Provercelli. He hit the post in that occasion. And it's no coincidence or surprise that he's the player that has played the most minutes out of all the games. 90 against Provercelli and 72 against Bayern Munich. Now, what is also interesting about this player is, as I said, he is a natural left wing back. So on the left, playing 5 in defense. And Spalletti did use a 5-3-2 at one point against Bayern Munich. If that is going to be something that Spalletti repeats throughout the season, going to a 5-3-2 at some points in the game, then we've got a natural player that plays that position, because Mauro Rui doesn't really play that position. So Zedatka, I think, is here to stay. Now, this opens up opportunities playing 5 at the back for Zanoli as well, the right back that we have. Why is that? Well, when you play 5 at the back, you need 3 central defenders. Right now, the only players that we have really confirmed for this season are Koulibaly, Manolas and Rahmani. That means we don't really have a backup central defenders, and I haven't heard too much news about Napoli buying a third center back. But the thing is, if we do play 5 at the back at some points in the season, especially considering injuries, we do need an extra person that can play center back. Now, that could be Di Lorenzo, who's played in that position a few times with Ancelotti, or it could be Zanoli in this case. He's 188 centimeters. I don't know how much that is in feet, but that is well over 6 feet. Why not? Why not use this kid as a potential right center back when we do play 3 at the back? Or maybe put him as the right wing back and Di Lorenzo as the right center back, with, again, Malquit also being that other option, because that's 3 players for essentially 2 positions. So I do think that there is room for these 2 kids, Zedatka and Zanoli, in this team, and I do think that Napoli will keep both of them this season. Guys, if you've liked this video, then smash that like button and subscribe. I donate 1 cent to the Cannavaro Ferrara Foundation for every like and subscriber that I get. Also, let me know what you think of Spalletti's Napoli in the comment section below, and as always, Forza Napoli sempre.